Hello everyone, welcome and thank you for joining our webinar on enhancing food traceability with Sage X3, hosted by BAS Business Solutions. My name is Aaron Dela Cruz and I'm the Digital Marketing Specialist for BAS, and I will assist in hosting this event. Before we dive in, I would like to cover a few housekeeping rules before the webinar begins. If you have a question, please type it into the chat or the question box. We will answer the question at the appropriate time. Please ensure your headphones are plugged in and the volume is turned up on your computer. If you are having any technical issues, please write it in our chat box and we will do our best to assist. Now, I'd like to introduce our presenters, Denis Boudreau, Sage X3 Practice Leader and Senior Business Consultant, Jeff Campbell, Director of Strategic Sales, and Glenn Charlton, Director of Professional Services. Go ahead, Denis.
Thank you, Aaron. So welcome everyone to this webinar on enhancing food traceability with Sage X3. So the agenda for today is we're going to spend a little bit, it's not about, we want to spend as much time as possible within the solution, but the idea is to talk about food traceability. We'll look at the kind of a broad definition of it, and then we'll kind of dissect the different aspect of food traceability. We'll spend a few minutes talking about the challenges, I guess, with food traceability in general. And then we'll follow up with a conversation around how Sage X3 can cater to your requirements with regards to food traceability. And then we'll dive into the product. So we have 20 minutes or so to go and look at the various aspects of X3 with regards to the food traceability. And then we'll wrap it up with we'll have time for some questions, and we'll conclude. And the objective is to deliver these sessions within the hour. So if we start with the definition of food traceability, right? So food traceability refers to the ability to track the movement of food products through the supply chain, right, from farm or sea to table. So this process involves documenting and monitoring the journey of food items at each stage, so including production, processing, distribution, and retail. So traceability helps ensure food safety, quality, compliance, and regulations, allowing for quick identification and response for foodborne illnesses and contamination issues. It also enhances transparency for consumers regarding the origin and handling of their food. Right. So when we think about, say, food traceabilities, if we kind of dissect this definitions, right, what are the different aspects of it? Number one, food safety, right? It allows for quick identifications and recall of contaminated products, like minimizing health and risk to consumers. So if there's, like an example could be like salmonella, perhaps, in the case of chicken. So we want to be able to respond quickly to any food safety concerns. Another aspect of it is the consumer confidence. So customers or populations in general expect or want to purchase, procure, and consume products that they know are actually treated, that people working on those products or those industries are actually treated fairly, and then they're basically eating goods that are sustainable, right? So having the ability to track the products from the farm to the table or from the sea to the table adds transparency as far as where the product has been through from a harvesting perspective or all the way down to the table. Quality assurance, so it helps ensure that food products meet safety and quality standards, so enabling businesses to maintain high quality offerings. So internally, as you're working perhaps on different recipes, being able to track what's actually been in the product. If you're working perhaps at refining the recipes, having a good track record of what lot numbers and what batch and what product actually went into what process can help increase your quality. Regulatory compliance. So many regions have laws and regulations that require traceability, making it essential for business to comply to avoid penalties. Again, a lot of times we kind of look at traceability of from an organization standpoint as kind of the bad guys, right, the bad boy. So of course there's regulations, but those regulations, I guess the message that I want to convey is there's a reason for this, right? I mean, it's obviously from a food safety perspective, but also population in general are expecting or are more and more demanding a full transparency. I guess understanding is where the goods are coming from. Supply chain management. So enhanced traceability improves efficiency in the supply chain, allowing for better inventory management and reducing waste. When you're thinking about traceabilities, when we look at first in first out or even FIFO, so understanding when the product was actually produced, the expiration date, so you can actually turn your inventory properly, and again lower the waste. So that can help on that level. Sustainability, I kind of touched base on this earlier on, where enabling consumers to make informed choices about sustainable practices and encourages producers to adopt environmentally friendly methods. In the case of fishing, perhaps, I mean, understanding where the product, which fishing zones or even which fishing vessels, the fishing methods, perhaps. So having that full transparency from sea to table helps a customer gain confidence over where the product came from. From a risk management, so understanding the flow of by understanding the flow of products, companies can better manage risk related to food safety and supply chain disruptions, right? So understanding if there's any, perhaps, I mean, when you're looking at productions, if there are certain ingredients or lots or batch, like the more information that you have can avoid being having disruptions or perhaps lack of raw components, I guess, in your manufacturing or production plant. Overall, the food traceability is crucial for safeguarding public health, supporting ethical practices, and then fostering a reliable food system. Now, let's look at the top challenges, I guess, for implementing or maintaining food traceability. So it can actually be quite complex in industries like food, pharmaceutical, and manufacturing. So here are some of the top challenges. So if you look at data integration, so merging data from various sources, right? Suppliers, productions, distribution. So that can be difficult, especially with if systems are not standardized, right? If you think about if you're the harvester and the manufacturer and distributor, but those could potentially be three different organizations. So those different levels or different organizations may have different systems. So integrations between the parties can be a challenge. Regulatory complexity, right? Different regions and the sectors having various regulations, so making compliance challenging from a global perspective. So if you have organizations in multi-countries, multi-continents, right? So compliance issues or laws in one continent or one country can differ from another. Supply chain complexity. So with multiple stakeholders and layers in the supply chain, so maintaining visibility and traceability throughout can be cumbersome, right? Again, the multi-level. If you think about, and again, I have a fair bit of experience from a seafood perspective, given that I'm based on the East Coast. Right, having traceability all the way from the fishing vessels, let's say, to the table, right? You have the fishermen, you have the buyers, perhaps at the dock side, you have the processors, perhaps you have a 3PL or third party warehouse, and then you have let's say maybe even your wholesalers, and then the consumer, right? So it involves multiple parties. Technology gaps can be another challenge as well. So many companies may lack the necessary technology or infrastructure to effectively track products through their life cycle. So when you think about the technology, again, having proper systems in place and also timely, having the proper infrastructure to capture the information on a timely basis. I spoke about the dog side, from capturing the raw, let's say the fish or the seafood. Well, you need the ability to have those devices to capture the information on a timely fashion if you're going to track it all the way through through productions and then through the distribution channel. There's cost implications. I mean, implementing robust traceability systems can be costly, especially for small and medium-sized enterprise, right? I mean, there's also training and awareness. I mean, as we put it, I mean, we can implement the solutions, but making sure that we have buy-ins from users. It takes a lot of discipline for users to to capture the information, and then it's critical that all parties are all steps of the way that people are actually understanding what needs to be captured in the timing of it. The data accuracy, right? So ensuring the data collected is accurate and reliable. Again, you're only as strong as your weakest link, as we put it, right? If you're thinking about traceability from, again, seed to table or farm to table, if there's bad data along the way, then that pretty much shoots the purpose, or that'll cause the challenges. Real-time monitoring, again, I touched base on it, being able to capture transactions as they happen, whether it's at dockside, whether at the dockside, whether it's at the farm in the field as you're harvesting, whether it's productions, whether it's movements of pallets or in a warehouse. So all of those movements of goods is critical from a food traceability perspective. And consumer expectations, I touched base with it previously. I mean, consumers are expecting, or more and more demanding, as far as like when I'm buying something at let's say at the grocery store, then I'm interested in understanding where is this coming from, right? Who has actually worked on, maybe it's a recipe, who's actually worked at the processing plant, and what type of policies, right, where everybody treated fairly. Is this a sustainable product, right? Sustainability concerns is the last item, right? I mean, people don't want to jeopardize the sustainability of a resource by consuming those goods. So again, consumers are demanding more and more transparency to fully understand where the goods that they're consuming are coming from and how they're being handled. So addressing these challenges requires a combination of technology, training, and clear communications across the supply chain. Okay, so we've looked at the definitions. I'm sure if you're in the food industry, I mean, nothing earth-shattering in here. But again, the one point that I find interesting, right, is that when we talk about food traceability, a lot of people think about compliance. It's basically the food police that comes in and say, hey, you have an hour to give me this report. But it's like there's kind of a bigger picture of that, right? We need to understand like the why of why food traceability is important. Now, what I'm going to show you today is how Sage X3, I'm going to say the core functionalities, or some of the functionalities within Sage X3 that addresses, or that help address the food traceability. So within Sage X3, there's the lot and sublot tracking. So there's also serialized inventory, but you can leverage lots and sublots to track where, either batches, or where, if we think about packaging, if we think about raw materials, you can track the lot and sublots throughout. And I'll basically show you this in the software shortly. There's version controls. In the case of version controls, you can have version controls on a product. You can have version control on a production BOM, so an actual recipe. And you can also have version controls on the production BOM routing. So if you've actually switch perhaps a production line, or switch a method, switch an operation, so you can have full version control within the software. Again, either at the BOM, through the BOM routing, through an actual production BOM, perhaps a components change, so you want to track the changes, and right at the product level as well. Allergens tracking. So if you're, depending on which industries you're into, allergens can be critical. So being able to track allergens, all the ingredients within a recipe, and then roll it up to the finished products. So that's you have that. Again, all of what I'm discussing, all of what I'm talking about here, is part of core native Sage X3 functionality. Within Sage X3, there's also the quality control modules. So quality control allows your QC department to define rules within the different types of movements of inventory, different types of perhaps different categories of items, and for instance, upon receiving, let's say, packaging from your supplier, you can leverage the item statuses within Sage X3 to basically make it as a quality controlled items. So from an item statuses perspective, just quickly, there's natively three statuses. There's the A for approve, there's the Q for QC, and there's the R for rejected. And then you can create substatuses if you wish. So again, if you think about this, as an item comes in, you could basically force the system to trigger a QC test. You can define your own list of questions, and then you can force the items to be, let's say, in a Q status until the results of the test are captured. And then depending on the results of the test, you would release the items to be an A for approve, or let's say R for rejected, or you could basically do further testing on this. Again, from a tracking perspective, you have full tracking of the different tests, and then full tracking of the movements between the different statuses. And for example, you could then prevent a sales of an item or a shipment of an item that's not of an A status being approved. Okay, so you certainly wouldn't want to ship a load, let's say, of seafood to a customer where the status is still as a QC mode and you're waiting for some QC results. Within Sage X3 as well, intersites, intercompany transactions, we talked about the complexity of having multiple organizations or multiple entities involved in the process. Perhaps as we're operating in a global market, a lot of pretty much all the industries, including the food industry, organization has got bigger, and then sometimes you can be the, let's say, the harvester. Maybe you're also have a separate entities being the processor, and perhaps you have a third entities being the distributor, or maybe you have multiple manufacturing locations or distribution locations. So with Sage X3, you're able to host and hold all of the companies and the sites within a single database, and then it handles the intersites and intercompany transactions. And along the transaction flow will flow the sublots, and all the information that we talked about earlier. Okay, so again, if you actually own multiple, in the case of the multi, right, multi-legislation, multi-companies, multi-sites, Sage X3 can meet your requirements. And then the actual native traceability functions, which we'll see shortly. Okay, so the traceability, if you do have a recall, if you need to do some analysis, and you're looking at drilling down on the where or the from, there's a native traceability that allows you to do those inquiries. So we're about to see. Without further ado, let's have a look at the X3 and touch base on some of the functionality that I just referred to. So X3, first of all, Sage X3, for those of you that have never seen X3, so it is a web-based solution. All I need basically is a browser, and in this case, we're hosting this on VAS Cloud, so this is our sales demo. But there's no need to install anything locally. All you need is a browser. You are able to access X3 from a browser. You also have the interface, the mobile application capabilities as well. When you think about warehouse movements, production tracking, shop floor, so there is a mobile application interface that's available. So let's log into Sage X3. When we talk about Sage X3 generally for a full-blown demo or for a full overview, we refer to X3 as multi. So when you think about from a global market perspective, but from a traceability perspective, if you're into multi-countries, if you're into perhaps you have multiple entities, so X3 will accommodate multiple language, first of all. So right now I'm logged in as Dennis, and then my language is set to English, but natively I can go and switch my language right on the fly. I could also set a default language to the user. So if you have users that maybe foreign workers, or perhaps you have clients in multiple countries, so the multi-language is a nice feature. Multi-legislation, so depending on where you're at on the globe, there's this specific requirements that caters to the different part of the world. So you can purchase the various legislation that will incorporate compliance functionality for those legislation. Multi-currency is one that's an easy one. Multi-ledgers as well. You also have the ability to have multiple ledgers per company. and multi-companies and multi-sites. We talked about it already. So when you look at the structure of X3, all common data, products, customers, vendors or suppliers, chart of accounts can be common amongst multiple sites or multiple entities. Okay, so if you look at this, you basically have within the same folder, within the same database, I could have a company that, let's say, NE10 and NE20, and then perhaps those two are actually two companies from the on the state. I can create a company group and then report on both companies. And then perhaps your third one is from, in this case, FR10, let's assume it's from France. So maybe you have a third legislation, and then you want to, if you need to do consolidation, you can report on at the top. Okay, so every transaction is tied to a site, and then a site is natively tied to a company. Okay, and then X3 will automatically, through the intercompany mapping, you're able to go and create rules between, like, if a PO from one company would then automatically turn into a sales order from company B, and then a sales invoice would then turn into a purchase invoice, right? So I'm just showing you this quickly of natively you can set up all of those rules in the back end. So intercompany transactions can occur. Intercompany journal entries can be automatically generated, or will be automatically generated, but more so from a food traceability perspective, everything regarding lots, sublots, and all QC tests, all of that information would follow suit. So you're in a single database. So you don't need to log out and go log back into an additional database or a separate database. Just from a quick tips on navigations within X3. So what you're seeing here is this section here are what we call the kind of the dashboards, or my landing pages. So if we look at the landing page, I just added one for a process flow, for traceability. I added a second page for structure. So so there's one way. So one way of navigating through X3 is through the actual process flows. Okay, so if I need, for instance, to look at products, I can click on products, and now I'm into the product item master record. If I want to go back to my home page, if I click on the Sage logo on the top left, now I'm back to my home screen. So this is typically the preferred method. Again, and the reason I'm showing you this is just from one of the challenges that that I discussed earlier about using traceability, food traceability, is it's got to be simple, and then we need user adoptions, right? As far as navigating through the system, finding what step and what functions I need to do, the idea is through the process flows, depending on the role that I play in the company, then I would have only the workflow or the functions that are applicable to my role. So as I log in, if I log in through the web interface, I would only see what I need to basically touch and modify. The other way as well is through the shortcuts. So I basically added a few shortcuts for this session. So I have one on products, on traceabilities, work orders, and so on. So those shortcuts can be managed through here. I can remove some. I can basically hide my favorite bar as well if I need more real estate. Okay, and then finally, I can also navigate through the full menu through my compass. So some people actually know the functions of what the product function is. So you can actually just key in the functions, and you can navigate straight at the function. Okay, again, just from a navigation standpoint, I'll be using, for the rest of the presentation today, I'll mostly be using the process flows and then the shortcuts on top. As I mentioned, Sage X3 is multi. So what we're looking at is we're actually in a seed folder. So we're kind of in one single database, if you will. We're going to be looking at jalapeno bean dip. So think about this as we're a manufacturer of jalapeno bean dip, and as you can imagine, the manufacturing bean dips could have potentially multiple levels, right, as assemblies. I mean, you would perhaps have your packaging, and then within the packaging, you would have your actual mix. Within the mix, you would have the spices, right? So we're gonna be looking at product FIN 301. So if we actually look at the products, we can access products from the shortcuts. When we look at the FIN 301 here, Let's look at the features within the product related to traceability. Okay, so the first feature, if you will look at within the management section, so this stock can be not managed or managed. In this case, we're dealing with a managed, we want to basically track quantities and costs of that jalapeno bean dip, right? So this is the finished products, and the finished products are 8-ounce, 24 packs. So picture this. So this is the actual dip, but they're actually basically packs or cases of 24 packs of 8-ouncer, okay, of the bean dip. The next thing is in the from a stock management, we looked at that. From a traceability perspective, we can turn the traceability on or off. We can have it as detailed traceability, as summary traceability, or as no traceability. So even though we are doing lot tracking and sublot tracking, if we don't need to do a traceability, maybe we just turn that off. In our case, we definitely will keep it on, and we want full traceability, having the ability to go all the way, like drill up, I'm going to say, looking forward and looking backward. Okay, so traceability is one option. The other functionality within native to the software is the expiry date. So in this case, when we're looking at lead times, what we're saying is like this product here has a shelf life of 180 calendar days, and then the use before date is set at 153 days. Again, all those fields are native to Sage X3. And if you look at the recontrol status, so after the product actually hits this, you want to turn it into an R status as a reject, because you don't want to be selling a product that's actually outdated. You can, again, from a configuration perspective, maybe you have like an R1, R2, R3. Maybe an R1 is, well, go in, retest, and then if you say, yeah, I can actually extend the shelf life by so many days of stock, then you can have a process in place to do so. The next sections is around lot management. So at the item level, in this case, I can ignore lots. I can, or I can make the lot optional. But if I want the food trace, if I want to be able to track all the way from I'm going to say from the sea to the table, then I would most likely set this up as mandatory lot. So as soon as I transact, in this case, let's say I receive packaging, I want to make sure that I'm forced to actually assign a lot to it. In this case, we're looking at the finished goods for jalapeno bean dip. As I'm doing the final assembly, I want to force the system to assign a lot to that batch. Now you can also do lot and sublot. So if you think about in this case, if we needed to track the product by, let's say, by case, right? Each case of 24. We're going to see this shortly in the units of measure, but the pack size can be a pack of 24. If we wanted to track every pack, right, every case, then we could set this up to lot and sublot, and then capture or assign sublots to every one of those cases would basically have a lot. So you can basically trace it down all the way to the packing unit. Next one on version management. I spoke about version management earlier, right? So you were able at the product itself. Right now, I don't have version management turned on, but if I actually add the activity code turned on for version management, then I could have I could manage either just major versions, or I can do major and minor. So you can define whether they're like alphanumeric characters, and then as you're doing changes, right, to your products, then you can track the different versions. Okay, so quite robust on version management. We did a few medical device manufacturing implementation in the last year, in the last 2 years, and they're doing, as you can imagine, in medical field, version management is quite critical. So we've implemented the version management for that. The next one is food allergens. So the functionality around food allergens, the idea would be that at the raw materials, right at the ingredient standpoint, you would define what allergens. You basically define your own list of allergens, first of all, and then they're typically identified by a letter. And then as you identify the allergens per ingredients, then there's a food allergens roll-up that function here. And when you run this, what it does is, depending on the bill of materials, which we'll see shortly, depending on the recipes, it's going to basically roll up and then push to the assembled or semi-assembled product all of the allergens codes. So when you're actually looking at this right now, when I look at the Y, what this means is that from as of, and actually we ran this morning, but as of October 22nd, that finished goods contains a Y allergen. Okay, so if you actually, well, actually I can drill down here, but like I would know Y is actually yeast, but I would know that this is made up of, there's at least yeast contained in this build. Okay, so if I add multiple ingredients as multiple allergens, then I would see multiple letters here. The next area from a traceability perspective, we talked about packing units. So in the case of pallets, so in this case, we're doing pallets of 16. So if I wanted to, in my earlier example, when I mentioned the lot and sublot, if I had a packing units of case, let's say a case of 24, as I'm producing cases, then the system could assign sublots to each case, and then a lot to the actual, again, depending on the logic of the lot on the lot sequence, could basically assign a lot per either per productions or production dates, or depending on how what's the structure, what's the logic on your lot sequence format. The other thing as well is if we actually drill down on the categories, okay? So right now we're looking at a product specifically, but the first thing the system will ask you when you're creating a new product is what category it's assigned to. Categories are driving a few things, but categories ultimately will speed up data entry. So there's some commonality amongst all items within the same category. So you would pre-fill some of the information, and then if there's any tweaking or exceptions or configurations that are different at the item level, you would basically set them up item by item. But if we look at the categories, there are a few things that are that every items within that category would be would basically respect from a rule standpoint. So if you look at the flow type, so for instance, when you think about traceability, we can also we also need to be aware of controls, right? So from a finished goods perspective, this category, FI and IS, we can limit which flow types are available or that we're able to complete for that item. So in this case, we're not buying, we're actually manufacturing the jalapeno bean dips. We're selling them, we're manufacturing them, as I mentioned, and then we want to make that item deliverables. Now, in the case of perhaps I could manufacture jalapeno bean dips, and perhaps I could buy and sell some. So in that case, it is possible to have both flow types available. Again, the idea from a flow type is just to restrict, right? To have a little bit more containment, I guess, or restrictions of what types of transactions you can do with an item. When we look at if we scroll down a little bit, so I'm looking at something like some of those items, as you can see, like lot management, serial management. I'm not touching base at the category level because those can actually be defined as well right at the item. But in the case of quality control, so I mentioned earlier about the quality control modules. So what you would do is at the category level, you can define whether the controls is whether we're going to basically force a QC test, let's say, to happen. So for instance, we could say, you know what, we're gonna basically force everything in the packaging category that when it's actually brought in from a supplier, that we're gonna basically force a series of tests, and we're gonna basically, there's no way out. So it's gonna be forced into a certain status, and users are going to be forced to enter technical sheets information, so test results, in order to release that good to a sellable status, let's say of an A status. And so that's one thing. Or perhaps we say, you know what, I'm gonna make this a changeable control. So as the default could be that perhaps there is a QC, but I'm still going to allow users, and I could actually give that permissions to a limited group of users that can actually go in and then change the control. So the default would say, yeah, take a test, go through the Q status, enter the QC results, or perhaps for whatever reason, maybe the batch that you purchased were pre-tested. You could change that control on that at the receiving level, and then bypass those quality tests. Again, that's all controllable right at the category level. And from a technical sheet standpoint, think about technical sheets as a list of questions that you, as an organization, would define. And so you could basically make your own list. You can have multiple technical sheets. And then you can also define the range of values. And then if the values are outside that range, you could basically force the record to go into a certain status, right? So for instance, I don't know, if you're looking at I don't know, from a food perspective, I don't know if you're looking at toxins, between 3 and 5, it's fine. Anything above 5, it would be rejected. So it would basically be pushed into a status of, let's say, R1 or R2, right? And then you would prevent movements of inventory of stocks that actually contains that status. Okay, so from a technical sheet standpoint, again, just keep in mind you're able to build your own list of questions, and then the idea would be to assign that sheet, that list of tests, to a category of items. So when there's actually stock movements, you can be forced to enter QC results. Another area is the storage. So you can actually do location management. So this is kind of the bin tracking, right? So as your good gets received, you may have a warehouse or a site that's location managed. So you actually want that item to respect that, and then it would basically force you to basically put it in either at the receiving time and then track stock movements based on locations at that site. You can also do container management. If you think about packaging, maybe packaging comes over from overseas or whatever ingredients that you're using, you're able to insert or combine multiple purchase orders or shipments into a container, and then have the ability to track that container, where it's at, and also pre-receive that container. Okay, so that's there's container management. Again, everything regarding related to tracking, right? If you look at the management rules, so from the management rules here, this kind of ties in the QC that I spoke with earlier. So you can define based on the movement types. Okay, so and again, we're still looking at the jalapeno bean dip, the finished products here. So based on those rules or those movement types, I'm sorry, what are the statuses that are authorized, right? So I may actually, if I do a stock change, I may be fine to move a Q status, right? One that's actually in QC. I can maybe change locations, but I would only accept let's say the A's from a sales perspective, right? I mean, we're in the receipts, but let's say from a sales, right? I would only be able to deliver an A status. So again, you can be quite granular as far as how you restrict or allow movements of stocks based on their statuses. A few other things as well is what is my default status when you actually have that movement. So this is the example that I was sharing about a purchase order, a receipt, right? The supplier receipt. So if I wanted, for instance, that the reason why that finished goods, it's kind of not applicable right now because we're not buying this, we're actually manufacturing. But in the case of a production, or let's say in the case of packaging, where you would be receiving this, so the status could be a Q for quality control, and then we could actually force an analysis request. So the analysis request would then force the QC department to come in, fill in the questions from that technical sheet that was assigned to that category, or therefore that item, and then release the goods, providing that they respect the values, I guess, right? They were within boundaries to whatever test was run. And then at the per transaction, do we want to force lot entries? Do we want to basically, we can define the default lots, and then we can also deal with the license plate, so LPNs, right, for pallets. So LPNs can also be optional or can be made mandatory, and we can actually even auto generate a license plate depending on stock movements. The issue flows, right? We can basically define allocation rules for both the inbounds and outbound, well, mostly for the outbound. So as you're thinking about, remember, like one of the aspect of traceability was the definition, right? There was like to lower the waste, right? So well, to lower the waste, as you're shipping out goods, as you're doing transactions, you may actually want to base your allocation rules on either by lot, maybe you do it on FIFO, you can also do on FIFO, so first expired, first out, or LIFO, right? So you can define different rules for different items, and again, that could help you reduce waste. So just very quickly, if we look at the, I'm going to come back. I'm going to come out of the product categories. I'm not going to save my changes. Just if we look at the jalapeno bean dip, so very quickly, if we go and drill down on the production BOM or the manufacturing BOM from it. Okay, so let's look at the recipe for a FIN 301. So that FIN 301, I can have multiple recipes for this. So we're looking at the code 40 right now. I can see all the ingredients, the components. This one here happens to be multiple levels, so we'll look at this shortly. But a recipe or a bill of materials can be in development, can be available. I can restrict dates, right? If I have multiple BOMs, some of them could be valid for a certain date range. I can do version control at the BOM level, okay? I can do and if I click on multi-level and I look at my NA021, okay, I can see that within my jalapeno bean dip, there's my finished products, which would contain the mix, the containers, the lid, the labels, and the cartons. And then I have a sub-assembly for the actual mix, which within the mix, I have the pinto beans, the jalapeno, the vinegar, the lard, and then the spices is yet another assembly, right? So I can have multi-level BOMs. All of those items could be lot and sublot track. So that's how I would get my traceability forward and backward. So we'll see. I'll show you this briefly. So if we look at the routing, this is where you can, the same thing from a routing standpoint, you can have multiple routing codes, you can have minor, major versions. You're able to track whether that routing is in development or available to use. And the routing basically deals with operations, right? So again, from a tracking perspective, the BOM we're looking at right now, or the recipe we're looking at right now, only has one operation, but it could have multiple operations. And with the shop floor, you could then track movements and track operations, track labor throughout the process. Okay, and this is where you have your scheduling. This is more manufacturing, but again, from a tracking perspective, you're able to add the various operations for that recipe and track the movements. So we've looked at the products, we looked at all the components or the functionality that can help track the food traceability. Now we've looked at the recipe or the bill of materials very, very quickly. If I actually close this, and now let's say that I get a recall for a product, or maybe internally, I mean, something's wrong. I mean, we've actually noticed that, hey, this is not the expected results. What tools do we have in Sage X3 to help us, either look forward or look backwards to say, where could the problem lie? Okay. So let's look at the, not at the finished products, but at the bean dip itself, right? Let's say the bean dip mix, okay? So we're going to do a backward traceability on item INT301. So INT301 was the first, I'm going to say the first level assembly, right? We had the mix, we had the container, the lid, the labels, right? So, and let's look at this for this specific lot. So what I would have here is, as I'm using the traceability functions, I would have access to all the lots that I've ever manufactured, just for the sake of a demo, because I want to make sure I have some valuable data to show you. I'm just going to pick this lot, and I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to select display. So what's going to happen here, what we're going to see is this magic here that we're seeing is we're looking at ingredients, the semi-finished goods, right? The jalapeno bean dip mix for that lot, and that lot could be a production date, right? You basically have the ability to define your structure for the lot. But what we see is we actually see everything that went into that dip, right? Everything that went into that dip mix. Okay, so from the INT301, there's basically there's my lot right, 0.25. Then if we actually drill down, there may actually be, actually there's another one here, right? There's my lot 325. But inside of that, right, all of those ingredients, the INT 302, the raw 306, the raw 307, which again contains, for different ingredients, also contain lots, I have full visibility of what actually went in to any of my production of bean dip with that lot number. Let's say that after some little bit of research, you've actually found the source. It was actually the pinto beans that actually caused the issue. Okay, so let's look at the raw. Let's look at the raw 302. Yeah, so if you look at the pinto beans, yeah, so let's assume that you actually, so you know that there's something odd about the beans that you've looked into. So again, you know that that bean has actually been part of that, of that bean dip with that lot. So if we look at this column here, you actually see that all the different transaction type. So if we look at this lot, LO 1211 NE 021, you can actually see a quality control record. So I'm actually able to drill down all the way down to the source, whether it's a work order issue, whether it's a supplier receipt, I could do that. But right now, I actually want to check the actual quality control test. So if I actually click on this and click on the entry, when I look at my entry, I'm now able to see there was a quality control record on the November 20th, 2024. Actually, that's the expiration reference. And if I actually look at the quality history, there's my technical sheets with my answers. And if I actually look at my technical sheets here itself, I can see that my percentage of moisture, I can see my results, I can see my raw material certifications, I can see my results. So right from a single screen, right, I'm looking at a semi-finished goods, I could have looked at the top assembly. Based on a lot, I see everything that went in. Now, if I need to drill down on any quality control results, then I'm able to do so. Okay. So all the way down to that item. Now, if I wanted to, so let's say that when you look at the INT 30, sorry, if I look at the raw 301, now it's like, okay, now identified that the raw 301 was the pinto bean was actually, the moisture was way too high. That's my issue. So if I actually go in here and I click on traceability, right? So you basically want to say, okay, well, where else did those pinto beans with that lot went into? So now I'm able to look at the other way around and see basically all of the recipes where the pinto beans went into. Okay. Now, what I could do is I could actually then filter. I could export this in Excel. I mean that's easy. I could then analyze the data. I would probably want to, if it was something serious, right? I mean, if it was a health concerns, I could then see that all lines with customer delivery, you can actually see the BP. So those are my customers that were actually shipped the product. So you have the dates, and then I could reach out to those customers, right? So you can define, you can filter through the criterias what type of documents you want to display here. So you could say, well, I only want to see the customer delivery, and then export that, and then there's your list of customers to contact. Again, we saw where you can actually drill down, or I'm going to say drill forwards or drill backward using that traceability functionality. If there's any questions, Glenn, I don't know if you've been monitoring the chat. Is there any specific questions that you would like to address?
Thanks, Denny. I'm just going to turn my camera back on here as well. We do have a few questions that have been raised. So what we have here is one question for traceability audit. We have 2 hours to complete a recall. How long does it actually take in Sage?
Well, as you saw from this screen, right, it's a matter of literally a matter of seconds or minutes, right? I mean, if you providing that, and you didn't look at this from I'm going to say from the top end or from the bottom end, right, with the forward and backward. So this is kind of the magic today. I kind of showed you, well, okay, before the magic happening, what are the different configuration required to make this happen? But yeah, I mean, within minutes, I mean, you're basically good to go. And again, keep in mind that you're able to export this in Excel as well, right?
Yeah. So commonly, if there's a customer complaint about some finished goods item, they would report what the product was and the lot number, and you do a backward traceability. You get to immediately see, like with it, in under a minute, see all of the raw materials that went into it. If you identify a raw material that had the issue, then you do forward traceability, see all of the products that went into, and then all of the customers it was shipped to. And like you say, you can export that so instantly with
Exactly.
under 5 minutes, you have your full audit complete. So.
That's correct.
Let's see, another question. Manufacturing, you showed a bill of material, which is what we expect to use, but does X3 track what was actually used? So then you have your full traceability. So if raw materials are substituted, is that actually managed in the system here as well for traceability?
Yeah, from the work order itself, the short answer is yes. I mean, you would basically have through the tracking of that work order, you would basically know which products actually got consumed. So as a work order, as an MO gets generated, a manufacturing order gets generated, or production order gets generated, then your standard bill of materials would be generated on it. And then depending on what items, what actual goods were consumed, when you look at the work order issues, for instance, I don't know, let's say if we look at this at the large, right? If we actually look at the entry, this entry should be, if we're looking at the full entry here, right? That's basically, that's the goods that actually, no, that's my finished goods. And if you look at the components, you can see which components actually went into that work orders, right? And then you'd be able to drill down and look at the lots on it. So the short answer is yes, absolutely.
All right, thank you. Okay, another question. Does Sage print barcode labels?
Yes,
So,
absolutely. So labels could be printed on products. I mean, you could have like shelf labels, you could have product labels. We talked about LPNs, right? License plate. You could have basically full pallet labels, and we have, yeah. I mean, that's easy. And then there's functionality within the software that you could even, if you're using the mobile application as you're receiving, maybe you have a kind of, or as you're doing the warehouse checks or assembly, you could basically have either like a kind of a belt printer or that you could actually print the labels right on the fly as the transactions are being recorded.
great. So I guess basically you've already half answered this, but the follow-on question was what printers are supported for label printing?
Yeah, so pretty much any label printers with a Windows driver can be used. So ideally like a printer that has a direct network interface to the Sage X3 server, so we can send the output directly to it. Again, like pallet labels. I mean, when you think about labels, these can be, just small labels. Obviously, you need to think about the environment, right there. Do they go in the cold? Do they go in the water? Like, is it wet? We have customers using just plain 8.5 by 11 full page sheet paper, like that. Either they can stick on the pallet and then do the wrap, or maybe a self adhesive label that goes after the wrap on those pallets.
Yeah. I might add, we also have customers that, of course, you have your receiving docks, you have stationary printers there. We have printers that are mobile on carts, and we have customers that have users that are doing picking. And as they're picking, labels are being printed to put onto a box to indicate where something's being shipped. So you have basically the full breadth of devices that are supported, whether it's a label printer worn on your hip or a fixed one.
Yeah.
That's all that we have for questions at this time. If there are other questions, I'll ask that people put them into the chat and get back to you as well with those.
Yeah. Excellent. Great. Well, I think we're right on time. So just as a brief summary, right? Key benefits. We've talked about regulatory compliance, right? I mean, we're able, based on the features you've seen today, we're able to X3 is able to handle food traceability pretty well. Real-time data. We didn't really show any. It would have taken a little bit more time, but I mean, to show you the mobile application, for instance, or the shop floor tracking as we're tracking, or even movements of pallets of goods. But again, we have this being web-based, and with the mobile application, you're able to track data in real time. From an integration perspective, we talked about the multi. From an integration perspective as well, X3 natively, whether it's the web APIs, GraphQL. I mean, there's different means to talk with X3, and when we can basically bridge any external software as required. User-friendly interfaces. We talked about the different ways of navigating through X3. If you think about a mobile application as well, those screens are very, very crisp, very clean, customizable as well, but they're usually users typically have to deal with 2 or 3 fields, scan and then next and confirm. From a scalability perspective, X3, again, it's built for, I'm going to say, global, small to medium-sized business, all the way to the global, like multi-legislation. Again, we talked about the multi. So definitely built for volume. So in conclusion, I mean, Sage X3 provides a comprehensive solutions for food traceability, helping organizations enhance compliance, improve operational efficiency, and ultimately safeguard consumer trust. So its ability to adapt to the evolving needs of the food industry position it as a valuable tool for companies committed to maintaining high standards of traceability and quality. Right? Again, like, it's not just, we got to think about traceability. You have, again, sustainability, having full transparency and being able to offer produce or goods to consumers where they can understand it. Yeah, they can be appreciative of where it's coming from, and then how it's been handled throughout the supply chain. And with that, I'd like to right at the hour. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending today's webinar on food traceability. If you do have any questions, you can look at more resource and find more information on our website, www.bass.com. Or if you do have any questions regarding if you're interested in perhaps either a deeper dive of Sage X3 or anything we can help you with, feel free to email marketing@bass.com, and they'll happily lend a resource to look after your questions. So with that, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.